So somebody wrote, it was really poignant and beautiful, that she'd had this awareness that it was okay to desire. And she kind of, the way she framed it was like, I want to live. And it's okay to desire. And she was, she said something like, I don't have to be numb. I don't have to, like, spank myself for having desires. And when I read, and she was really understanding that this is not a route of thinking that you have to be some passionless, shut down person who punishes yourself for having desires. Oh my God. I mean, isn't it God's greatest joke that I'm like the person, theoretically, who's running this forum? I mean, I don't even know what I am, a person or a whatever I am. That, the last thing I've ever said here is shut your desires off or be some kind of robot, be some kind of spiritual robot. So I'm so happy that she saw this. I think it's a common misunderstanding. The key to the story is offering. The key to the story is not repression. Oh my God. The last thing in the world we need are any more people on the planet repressing anything about themselves in the name of spirituality. That's already, like, been there, done that. I've seen it so much, I mean, that's why I have that story in the book about this woman, and she was part of an ashram, and she was, like, madly in love with the Rolling Stones, and, the only music that was considered godly was, just chants, bhajans and chants, and so she felt so guilty, and then, she would go and she would get in her car and, like, hide with all this shame and just blast the Stones in her car. And then when we finally talked, I was like, what makes you think the Stones aren't God? Of course. I'm sure Mick Jagger would say, of course he's God. In fact, he may be the only one who's God. But you know what I mean? It's like all of it. There's nothing that's not included. The difference is the act of offering, because so many paths, just so many New Age paths, just say, just desire more, focus, 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 you will get it. Your mind will manifest that dream. Now, to me, that's insanity, because yes, you will manifest that dream one way or another if you fixate long enough, but have no illusion that that dream of itself can bring happiness, because without offering and without knowing that it comes as grace from the divine, it's just one more addiction and fixation. So that's the difference here. It is not about killing desire. I mean, my God, I have 4 planets in fire. If I had to kill off desire, I'd have to leave the planet. Desire comes with being in a human body. What starts to happen is that the desires become offered to the divine, not to be repressed, but to be made sacred. Then whatever's meant to happen with that desire gets handled by the divine, because eventually over time, and I think a lot of you are already feeling this, there is one primary, driving, passionate desire at the top of the whole heap, and that's for the divine, to know yourself as the divine. And so once that's the top one, then all the rest is like, oh, wow, all the mind will just generate all kinds of stuff. Oh, I like that house. Oh, I like this. I like that. Whatever. You don't blame yourself for any of that. It's just that it stops having the urgency, because you just, you're like, oh, whatever, God, here, whatever you think. but you also start feeling whole without that thing. And I think, again, a lot of you are starting to feel this. It just takes practice. You're whole without that house that you just saw that was so cute with the 6-burner stove. And you're whole without that partner. And you're whole without the trip to Italy or whatever the thing is. You're whole without it. And then it just is fine that those desires come up. They just will. Human bodies have desires. And if you shut it all down, you would be that kind of numb robot. Now, I would also say, depending on your nature, for some people over time, a lot of desires truly just fall away altogether. And I've found that for myself. It's like there's things that are still very strong preferences, and there's things that so much is left. It's like, I don't care. To be honest, I don't care anymore if I travel. Like, that was such a big topic. And now I'm like, it would be really fun, but I don't care anymore. Like, that just had to get burnt to a nub. And, it's like certain things of their own just fall away, and then God can do what she wants. And others remain strong preferences, but you no longer have that feeling that you'll die if you don't get it. It's like, it's a strong preference, but you won't die if you don't get it. So I hope that helps distinguish it. And I was just so happy, so happy that, maybe it was Frida. I'm trying to remember, but I'm so happy that person had that awareness, because I think it's one that is so easy to get. Somebody actually read I think it was even before the Changing Prayer book, and they wrote me a note, and they said, well, what am I just supposed to be, a cold fish and just go through the world with total neutrality and not care about anything? And, and I'm like, of course not. Of course not. You just start to belong to the inner divine. You literally do. Again, I think this is something that's not an abstraction, and some of you are starting to feel this. And don't worry if you're not, because it will come. But you literally start to feel like you belong to the inner divine, not to some outer guy in the sky, fairy tale, but that you belong to that force of love, and that it kind of begins to inundate you with what you need. And sometimes what you need are delays and waits and periods of confusion, but you start to fear it less because at the right time that'll get clear too. So anyway, I hope that helps. My God, I just pray that nobody hearing these calls in any way thinks that the purpose of this work is to shut yourself down in any way or become some kind of numb, closed down person. In fact, you become much more alive, I found, because fear and anxiety and worry stop running the show. So all the rest of you starts to come alive. And then all these things just start happening. Again, I can't remember who posted this, but somebody posted the coolest thing where all of a sudden a ukulele came her way. I just thought that was so poignant. Like she thought, I might like a ukulele. And all of a sudden this ukulele came, and this guy came who started giving her lessons. And I just think these things start to happen in these very spontaneous ways that have nothing to do with manifesting. They're offering. The thought is simply offered to the divine, and sometimes if God thinks it's a good idea, it comes in 2 seconds. And sometimes if God thinks it's a good idea later, it comes in 2 years, because God's like, you really don't need that right now. But I've got it on my list for you. That's kind of what's funny with this is I think rather than needing a list of all the stuff to pester the divine about, God starts to keep a list for you. I mean, I don't know. I'm just being silly. But I do think that's a little bit how it starts to feel, like you just have a thought and God's like, okay, I got it. But, like, just chill out and wait for that. That's going to come later. Because what you're saying is, I want God the most. You're no longer saying, and if you haven't had a chance to hear the Hay House radio show that Christiane and I did, I do think it was quite good. And this is the last thing I'll say before I answer the questions. There's a piece of it at the end where I'm really just very frankly sharing that I do really know, I know this without question, that I've had past lives where I did not put God first. And that's the source of this wild, wild passion I have for doing it differently this life. I know that there were lives where, other things mattered more. And I would get to the end of those, each life, I mean, I think I did it over and over. I'd get to the end of the life and I'd go, oh, fuck, I put relationship first, or, oh, God, I put, my abilities and talents first, or, whatever. I mean, there's 1,000 things you can put first before the divine, and at each time I'd get to the end of the life and I would go, oh, no, not again, and you'd be dropping the body and just going, ah. So something happened this life, and I feel very clear about it. And maybe you can relate to this, because I think these are the kind of people that find this work, is something happened and my soul just said, you're not going to put God third on the list again or second on the list. The divine is going to be first, no matter what you have to go through. I know my soul said that. It just said, it's got to be first. So some of you can probably relate to that, and I think it's created that feeling in me of a deep insistence. And the more you do it, it actually becomes quite ecstatic. But it's not about repressing any desires or blaming yourself. It's embracing them and giving them to God, truly, and saying whatever you wish. Yes or no, later, whatever. Here, it's all yours because I want you more. I want you more. If you just turn inside and say to that inner self, I want you more, everything changes. That's all I know. Everything changes.